Yo, what's up guys? Welcome back to the channel. In today's video, we have a ton of stuff to go over regarding Battlefield 6. First, details regarding Season 3 DICE's plans as to what they're going to be doing. And there are some big ticket items mentioned in this brand new community update. Recoil nerf for controllers, more recoil for every single weapon in the game potentially, mortar changes, netcode improvements. There's a ton of stuff to be going over in this video. So if you have never watched the channel before, I cover Battlefield regularly. So if you want to keep up to date with Battlefield 6, this is the channel for you. Be sure to hit the sub button, hit the like button, and check out my second channel where I talk about my hobby, which is fragrances from an enthusiast perspective. And if you didn't know, all of my YouTube content will now also be posted on Spotify. Both the links to my second channel and the Spotify will be in the description and the pinned comment. It's been hard running two YouTube channels consistently at once, but I've figured out a good way to do it now, and I think I'm starting to get really consistent. So hopefully you guys enjoy all the content, and let's get right into all of this new stuff regarding Battlefield 6. First, I'm going to go over the brand new community update, and then we have newly data mined data from Temporal regarding potential recoil increases across every single weapon in the entire game. The community update gives us the first details of what Season 3 will start to address in Battlefield 6. They start us off with a summary of what to expect in Season 3. They say, we're continuing our focus on improving the core Battlefield experience. This includes ongoing work around combat feel, responsiveness, and readability, while also expanding the scale and variety of experiences available across the game. Alongside these improvements, Season 3 introduces some of our most exciting additions yet, including Galmud Railway, the introduction of ranked Battle Royale starting with quads through Battlefield Labs, and more updates that we're looking forward to sharing with you. Next, they detail a bunch of things about Galmud Railway. I actually have an entirely separate video detailing everything to know about Galmud, so if you're interested in that, I will link that video in the description. After that, they talk about the most important thing in really the entire game, which is gameplay improvements. They give a brief recap of what they did in Season 2 and their focus. So they say they made a series of improvements to hit registration, netcode feedback, and overall combat readability. And with Season 3, they're looking to build off of that work with additional updates aimed at, quote, making combat feel more responsive, readable, and consistent. They also go on to say that we can expect clearer communication of incoming damage, faster feedback when taking damage or being killed, and overall improvements to how engagements play out in fast-paced situations. Next, they go over how they are continuing to evaluate the, quote, weapon behavior and time to kill of Battlefield 6. They say, our focus here is on improving consistency in depth and making it more demanding to hit targets at longer ranges while encouraging more controlled and deliberate engagements. This is spot on, and I cannot even emphasize that enough. I am so happy to see them say this in the way that they said it. It shows me that they really understand the core issue, or one of the core issues regarding Battlefield 6's gameplay loop. They go on to say that as part of this, we're making adjustments to recoil behavior across inputs, including reducing how much recoil is automatically mitigated on controller, helping bring consistency across different control schemes. These changes aim to make weapon performance easier to understand while rewarding positioning and accuracy across different combat ranges. Yes, you heard that correctly. They are nerfing the recoil reduction controller automatically gets. If you didn't know, just using a controller on Battlefield 6 reduced your recoil by 22%, which was equivalent to using the 35-point recoil control grip called the Classic Vertical. And controller players got that recoil control for free without equipping any attachments. This specific change they plan to make in Season 3 has received a ton of commentary, particularly from controller players that are just concerned that they're just never going to be able to actually hit anything anymore or compete with PC players. And I totally understand the concern. However, if you played Battlefield 6 long enough, it was actually pretty hilarious how accurately you could predict if you were getting shot at by a controller player at distance. The fact of the matter is, the recoil reduction for controller players literally just made it so that controller players did not have to really respect recoil control nearly as much, even though some people will argue, oh, controlling recoil is harder with your thumb than it is with a mouse. Newsflash, it's not really that hard to just pull your thumb down in a specific direction, guys. Whether it be down left, down right, straight down, you can absolutely learn how to do it at a very, very high level. And if you don't believe that, just go watch Maxic's gameplay. The other thing about the controller recoil reduction is that it allowed controller players to ignore the meta weapon setups and run things that are just completely impossible to use on mouse and keyboard. I can't tell you the amount of times I've died to people using 4x scopes on TR7s. People using M433s and some of the highest recoiling weapons in the game without recoil grips, simply because they don't have to on controller. Now, do I think that controller in Battlefield 6 was overpowered? Absolutely not. However, the recoil reduction is abnormally high and it was an issue, and I think DICE reducing it from 22% to just 11% recoil reduction brings the two inputs more in line, and in my opinion, mouse and keyboard and controller are now better balanced as a result. And that really is the key, guys. I see a lot of people say, oh, Enders hates controller players. Absolutely nowhere near the truth. I am always in favor of making sure you can balance controller versus mouse and keyboard as well as you can against each other, because, guys, let's face it, crossplay is going nowhere. It's kind of the way of the future, so the best course of action is just trying to maintain the best balance you possibly can. And to be perfectly honest, I think a lot of controller players will actually be happy that the recoil reduction is getting nerfed, because it technically increases the skill gap on controller, making sure that better players get rewarded more often, and worse players don't get free kills because of crazy recoil reduction anymore. The result of this for many players is that if you feel you're struggling with recoil after this update, you're probably just going to have to change your weapon setups, and then it'll feel like normal anyway. So a lot of yapping on just that one topic, but I do feel it is a really important thing to discuss and make sure people are aware of. They continue this post by saying, in parallel, we will continue to test combat-focused updates through Battlefield Labs. This includes continued improvements to hit registration and netcode, as well as targeted improvements to soldier visibility on new Season 3 maps. We're also continuing work on broader visibility systems, including updates to the soldier visibility filter, or the SOVIS filter, that will roll out later in the season. Additionally, we're also exploring new ways to better communicate weapon behavior, including experimental features that help visualize dispersion while aiming down sight. Some of these improvements will begin rolling out at the beginning of Season 3, while others will continue to be refined through Battlefield Labs and arrive later. So, number one, really love anything to do with better visibility. Just add glow sticks to the character models at this point, man. I mean, there's only so much they can really do with lighting and all this, and eventually they're going to have to go with some other methods. So I'm really interested to see what they end up doing with that. And then when it comes to this new experimental feature that somehow visualizes weapon spread or weapon dispersion while aiming down sight, that is the coolest fucking thing ever for new players that are having trouble understanding what is actually happening within a gunfight. Spread or dispersion, whatever you want to call it, is the mechanic that makes you miss when you shoot for full auto for too long. It makes your bullets, in a lot of people's minds, fly everywhere, which is not true. But basically, this experimental feature will help people understand what is happening in a gunfight. It will show them how they're becoming less accurate, and hopefully, as a result, people will understand the gunplay a little bit better. Now, moving on to some Mortar-specific changes, can I just say up front, fuck Mortar players, okay? I'm just gonna, hey, this is an anti-Mortar zone, as far as I'm concerned. But, they said, we're continuing to see discussions around the role of the Mortar, and we want to reinforce its identity as a team play-focused tool. The Mortar is most effective when used in coordination with your squad, whether that's through suppressing fire or working alongside recon players to designate targets. Following our latest update with Hunter Prey, we made an adjustment to how mortars are resupplied from crates, increasing the resupply time from 10 to 30 seconds to address feedback. You may also remember that DICE made a change that allowed Mortar players to mortar from their spawn or HQ, which is still one of the dumbest changes I've ever seen. However, they partially address this with one of the things they mention here in this paragraph. They say, with the launch of Season 3, we're introducing further adjustments that reinforce this role. Number one, Mortar no longer regenerates ammo while an active instance is deployed. And number two, accuracy decreases at longer ranges, discouraging long-distance camping. And they say camping very deliberately there, because what this change is aiming to do is it is aiming to prevent people from placing a mortar all the way back in their uncap and still getting accurate shots on people that are on the objective. This change will essentially force Mortar players closer to the action if they actually want to hit their targets. They say that they want to encourage a shoot and scoot playstyle rather than basically just encouraging camping. So that's cool. Love to see that from DICE. The next section they mention is just a small section regarding vehicle updates coming soon. And yes, that is actually what they named the section of this. Doesn't really instill a lot of confidence, seeing as Galmud Railway is literally the map they're going to be releasing in Season 3. But, you know, here's what they say. We're continuing to review vehicle gameplay across Battlefield 6, with an initial focus on improvements to land vehicles, especially tanks. Feedback from our Discord community surveys, particularly around vehicles, has encouraged us to share a closer look at the changes coming in Season 3 and the thinking behind them. These updates focus on improving how vehicle combat feels moment to moment, making engagements easier to read, outcomes more consistent, and controls more responsive. We'll be sharing a dedicated deep dive blog on what the team has been working on soon, TM. As we look further ahead with features like naval warfare arriving in Season 4, we're continuing to build toward a more balanced and cohesive vehicle ecosystem across all Battlefield experiences, including ongoing work across both ground and air vehicle gameplay. So, biggest thing to take home here is the vehicles are definitely still a massive, massive sore spot just within the studio. Like, this shit is taking a long time for them to address anything relating to vehicles whatsoever. Still no air radar, no really word of that. Still no nerfs to majorly overpowered gadgets like PLDs. Flares are really inconsistent. The balance between vehicle versus infantry, vehicle versus vehicle is still really all over the place. So as far as I'm concerned, vehicles remain one of the largest concerns in Battlefield 6, and I really, really hope eventually they will figure something out and just improve them drastically. The next section isn't really that important in my opinion, but it has to do with ping system improvements. They say that they are building on improvements introduced in Season 2. Pinging will be more responsive and consistent with reduced input delay and fewer situations where pings are unintentionally canceled. This is really important for REDSEC, more so than the multiplayer in my opinion. But if they're planning on improving the ping system, this can help improve communication with your squad mates. That's completely fine. I am happy to see ping system improvements in general. Next up, they're actually talking about matchmaking, and this section has some really confusing UI improvements. I would even stretch to call it an improvement. But they say that they are aware of ongoing discussions around matchmaking and are continuing to make adjustments in the backend to improve match availability and overall experience. Comment down below. When you load into a game of Battlefield 6, is the game a complete fucking blowout? If I had a dime for every time I was loaded into a late join match of escalation where my team is losing 2-0 and they have 5 kills between the entire team, I'd think I'd be a millionaire at this point. The same thing can be said for pretty much every game mode, especially Breakthrough. In my experience, I really feel as though complete and total blowouts happen in Battlefield 6 more than any other Battlefield game I have played. But they go on to mention that as they head into Season 3, and with the introduction of Ranked Battle Royale, that they will be closely monitoring how matchmaking performs across the multiple experiences in the game, particularly the modes that will require higher player counts. They go on to say that their focus is on ensuring that players can consistently find matches while maintaining a quality gameplay experience. They go on to say that they're updating the UI and how the playlists and experiences are organized to help people, quote, get into matches faster and surface experiences that are more relevant to actually what you play in the game. They say that we won't experience any major visual UI changes, but we will notice a shift in how content is organized and presented. However, this kind of just means there's even more tabs, even more things to scroll through in the UI. Overall, I don't really see how these changes are going to improve the experience, but whatever. After this, they tell us about Ranked Battle Royale and just some general Battle Royale changes that I'm just going to rattle off here because I know not a lot of you guys are really interested in REDSEC. So they mentioned they are making a number of updates to Battle Royale vehicles, as well as balance, how you engage vehicles, how easy they are to identify. They have also made adjustments to the landing experience. It should be smoother for a lot of people. One of the biggest changes that will impact gameplay is that they nerfed the recon drone by reducing its zoom level and increasing its cooldown to better align with its gameplay impact. And yeah, it had a massive gameplay impact. Before the Elite Series tournament got postponed and then re-announced very recently, the meta, literally for a $1 million+ tournament, was to rotate recon drones off of cooldown so you had 100% awareness the entire time. Then finally they talk about how ranked Battle Royale is coming, first with Battle Royale quads, and then solos will be coming eventually. So that's cool, some cool stuff for REDSEC. I don't really know if they're ever going to be able to pull any sort of decent interest back into REDSEC though. They're kind of just screwed when it comes to that game mode, in my opinion. Believe it or not, we are not done. A lot of stuff came out today, guys. We have some new leaks from Temporal. This time, a bunch of recoil changes and adjustments from Battlefield Labs, including specific recoil amount increases, recoil variation increases for basically every single weapon in Battlefield 6. These are leaks, so please take them with a grain of salt. However, with the specific nature of this data, I would not be surprised if this is basically exactly what happened in recent Battlefield Labs playtests. Taking a look at this graph here, first of all, reading in the upper right, comparing the Battlefield Labs test build to the current Battlefield 6 retail version, surfacing recoil changes applied to automatic weapons. Values are subject to change before final release, of course. Then taking a look at the left side of your screen, the recoil amount here. This is effective recoil amount increase per weapon sorted by percent delta. So the weapons hit the hardest are the KV-9, TR-7, and CZ-3A1. It's worth noting that the recoil amount apparently just applies to vertical recoil, and recoil variation applies to horizontal recoil, horizontal being the nastier version of recoil in my opinion. Honestly though, the TR-7 already had ridiculously insane recoil, so I'm not sure if even more vertical recoil was needed. However, there seems to be a very specific focus on increasing SMG vertical recoil in this post. It's no secret that the Battlefield community has been complaining about SMGs and their effectiveness at range for, well, the longest time. And pretty much every weapon in the game did need more recoil, aside from a few different ones like the TR-7, which I felt the recoil was already sufficient enough. Taking a look at the recoil variation now, the VCR-2, SG-553R, and the SCW-10 are the weapons that were hit the hardest. These weapons will now be significantly more difficult to use at range because, once again, recoil variation, I believe it is horizontal recoil, but it is also, I think, random recoil or an element of random recoil. Any weapon you see mentioned high up on this recoil variation list should be significantly harder to use at range effectively. And finally, the dual axis changes. This is just showing the combined values and showing the weapons that were hit the hardest. In general, I really agree with this direction. I do think the weapons needed more recoil. I am so relieved they are finally making some very impactful gameplay changes to the gunplay. This will change the gameplay loop and the viability of a lot of weapons in Battlefield 6, and it should give you guys your precious breathing room back, at least partially. We still need things addressed like muzzle velocity and maybe some increased spread. But seeing them address recoil in this manner is definitely very, very good to see, and there's really nothing to complain about here. So, lots of stuff we just went over. Be sure to let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. I'm glad to see them finally start to stop sitting on their fucking hands with Battlefield 6. Really glad to see some impactful gameplay changes coming to the game. And keep in mind, there is more to come. This is only the very first details we have heard regarding Season 3. The patch notes are, of course, going to be biblical. At least I expect them to be. And I'm sure they're going to be addressing more things throughout the season as well. So that being said, if you enjoy the channel, if you want to stay up to date with Battlefield 6, be sure to hit the sub button, hit the like button, and check out the second channel. Thank you guys so much for watching, as always. And I will see you guys in the next video.